Morning, everyone. This is Russell Rucker. I'm here for another constitutional talk. We were talking a couple weeks ago about what was going on in the convention hall, and after they first gathered, and they set up their rules committee, and the first thing, then following that, the first thing was their discussion on the State of the Union. The first half or better of the convention, they were arguing over Article 1, and Article 1 has to do with the duties and privileges of Congress, of the House of Representatives and the Senate. But as you get to the second article, and we're talking about the presidency, and I know we talked earlier about the Electoral College that's there, which is almost the first thing in Article 2. But when you get to Section 3, what we have in Article 2, Section 3, he, meaning the president, he from time to time shall give to Congress information on the State of the Union. That's what I'd like to talk about today, is our State of the Union. And the State of the Union address was not always meant for a divisive issues. It was meant to give a report to Congress. You see, these branches were created as equal separate branches. But as you look at the convention itself, it appears anyway that they thought Congress was more important. And so here they're ordering the president to, from time to time, give information to Congress. It's important to note that it was not meant as this great elaborate speech and then allow the other side to belittle anything that the president just said. It wasn't always that you had a Republican or Democrat response. And it says to recommend to their consideration such measures as he judges necessary and expedient. So not only is he telling us what's going on in the country for our good and how somehow we got around the problem, he's also telling us what we need. Some future thing that he thinks that we need. And there could be a variety of things. But it's all in the separation of powers. So you have Congress having the right to write legislation. They have the right to start all spending has to start in the House of Representatives. But it also has the president and his duty to enforce laws and to execute the government issues that Congress supported and passed. So once he signs it, it's his duty to execute the law. And this really is an important distinction. But every late January, early February, and we have the president come down for his State of the Union address, and it's generally before a joint session of Congress. It doesn't necessarily have to be, because after the language I just spoke of, it goes on and talks about reasons why he can order Congress together. Or let me just get that quote for you to help you out. He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them. And in cases of disagreement between them with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a joint session of Congress, but it generally is. Now, I thought it would be fun to go through some of the early State of the Union addresses. So with that, and this is right clear out of the messages and papers of the presidents, fellow citizens of the Senate and the House of Representatives, I meet you upon the present occasion with the feelings which are naturally inspired by a strong impression of the prosperous situation of our common country, and by a persuasion equally strong that the labors of the session, which has just commenced, will, under the guidance of the spirit no less prudent than patriotic, issue in measures conclusive to the stability and increase of national prosperity. Numerous as are the providential blessings which demand our grateful accomplishments, the abundance with which year has again rewarded the industry of the husbandry is too important to escape recollection. So he's telling us, George Washington is, how good things are going, and how things are being accomplished, and that we're going to keep, and that we're going to carry on. So let's move on to Thomas Jefferson. Among our Indian neighbors also a spirit of peace and friendship generally prevails. And I am happy to inform you that the continued efforts to introduce among them the implements of the practice of husbandry and of the household have not been without success. That they are becoming more and more sensible of the superiority of this depends for clothing and subsistence over the precarious resources of hunting and fishing. And already we are enabled to announce that instead of that constant diminution of their numbers produced by their wars and their wants, some of them began to experience an increase in population. So there, Jefferson talks about the Indian nations, and because they've introduced farming and other methods of subsistence, that they're no longer fighting amongst each other, and they are improving. And, it's kind of an interesting thing. I learned today that George Washington had originally intended that these Indian nations would actually become independent states. Well, states of our union. I just thought that was an interesting side note. Now I'll move on from Washington and Jefferson to Madison. To this determination, the best encouragement is derived from the success with which it has pleased the Almighty to bless our arms, both on land and on the water. Whilst proofs have been continued of the enterprise and skill of our cruisers, public and private, on the ocean, and new trophy gained in the capture of a British by an American vessel of war, after an action given celebrity to the name of the victorious commander, the great inland waters on which the enemy were always to be encountered have presented achievement of our naval arms as brilliant as in their character as they have important in their consequences. See, he's talking about the war we're engaged in. That war is the War of 1812. This was the 5th annual message from December 7th, 1813. On to the 7th message. In conformity with the articles in the Treaty of Ghent relating to the Indians, as well as with a view to the tranquility of our western and northern frontiers, measures were taken to establish an immediate peace with the several tribes who had been engaged in hostilities against the United States. Some of them, as we invited to Detroit, acceded readily to a renewal of the former treaties of friendship. Of the other tribes who were invited to a station on the Mississippi, the greater numbers have also accepted the peace offered to them. The residue consisting of the more distant tribes or parts of tribes remain to be brought over by further explanations or by such other means as may be adapted to the dispositions they may finally disclose. So there we're talking about our continued long war with the Indian nations. And he's talking about peace treaties needing to be done. And there was a lot of this in the beginning of our republic because there was a big conflict between white people and the Indians. Let's be fair about it. You know, when you get to states of unions, they talk about what they've accomplished, what they need to accomplish. And a lot of times they ask Congress for something. They ask Congress for, say, a new program or a new law to correct some kind of problem. And that is the proper place for the State of the Union. Many times it's a long laundry list of wants and needs of one particular group or the other. Many of these never make the light of day, and many of them are not designed to make the light of day, because in the highly political climate that we live in, there's always fighting back and forth for party concerns, which is one of the reasons Washington warned against political parties in his farewell address. The State of the Union is an important speech. It's an important duty. It's not really being used the way it was intended. It was intended as a report to Congress to tell Congress what the problems were, what we should be doing. And that's not really how it's being used today. But to report to Congress about the wants and needs is the duty of the President of the United States. He is our commander-in-chief, and as you heard Madison talk about arms and war going on, and that is our best example of our founders, is the War of 1812, or the hostilities with the Indians. Those are our best examples. Now, as we progress as a nation, we had other difficult challenges to meet. We had the issues of coining money, for instance, and a lot of other issues along the way, and the great divide of slavery that so enabled us for the first 100 years. It was a big problem. We were so divided, much as we are today. So this report to Congress is important. I want you to think about that when you're listening to the President in the State of the Union address. I want you to think about what he's saying and what he's trying to accomplish. And I want you to realize he may say to my fellow Americans, but really who he's supposed to be talking to is Congress itself before a joint session to give a report of how well our State of the Union is. And with that, I thank you for your time, and you have a good day. We'll catch you next time. Bye now.